this ballad. It goes like this. It goes. And it's kind of long. It's got a bunch of parts to it. We should record it in 3 different parts. Wow, Chris, what's that?
It's a little something I've been working on.
But I got it. Oh, I like that. By the way. No, I got nothing. I'll figure it out, though. I got one. Hold on. Oh. That's really pretty. You know what we should do? We should tag that at the end of this thing I've been writing. Fucking fooling around with this thing. It goes. I don't know that one. Yeah, no, I don't think that one's gonna work. B-side. Okay, ready?
Ready?
Let's record a song.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's an oasis, you know? There's a lot of country out there. I mean, there's a lot of space. And then in the middle of all that space, some of the coolest, freakiest stuff comes out of this city, you know, that goes on to inspire people around the world.
If you're into music, art, any sort of self-expression like that, you tend to kind of gravitate to here.
There is a certain feeling that you get when you go there, and I think that's what happened to me when I was a kid. It was wide open, it felt free. You could do anything.
I think there's something here. There's something geographically or, I don't know, mystically or something. It's not only an oasis in Texas, I think it's an oasis in the whole country.
You know, a lot of people think that it's this oasis of liberalism in the middle of Texas. The cowboy next door with his rodeo wife and the lesbian couple on the other side of you. But what you don't realize is the lesbian couple voted for Bush and the rodeo wife is the closeted lesbian. It's just a weird place.
I mean, there's so much stuff that's come out of this place that kind of started things that it is kind of amazing. And I don't know if it's the water, the attitude, or what, but it's just...
You know, in the 60s, it was such a hippie town, and then late 70s and 80s, pretty punk rock.
Somewhere in the 90s, it really started turning into just crazy.
It became a big small town.
Boy, they will tell you what they are. That is the live music capital of the world, isn't it? Isn't it what they say? Live music capital of bar bands or whatever. God bless them, I love Austin.
That was all a deliberate Chamber of Commerce kind of thing. Austin's the live music capital of the world and everything. But there's some truth to it.
You know, you can go from hearing a reggae band to rock to blues to jazz, country, like next door to each other every single night.
People wonder why Austin has never become like another Nashville or LA when it comes to the music. When Willie came to town. Whiskey River, take my mind. Don't let a memory torture me.
You were born in Abbott, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a lot of songwriters will go from Texas to Nashville, but you seem like you were one of the few that went back.
Well, I went there for a while and stayed there for quite a few years and liked it. But most of my work was in Texas. And I thought about Houston first. My sister lived in Austin, so I visited her and decided that's where I'd start out. Then we had the first 4th of July picnic over in Dripping Springs, and that changed a lot of things.
Austin already was a music town, but it was really when Willie came to town that somehow all the things converged. That's sort of what really brought Austin to a public knowledge.
Willie moving back to Texas kind of changed my life. I probably wouldn't, I definitely wouldn't be exactly who I am if it hadn't been for that. All of a sudden, I didn't get my ass kicked. I mean, I can remember seeing Willie at a place called the Half Dollar, and the hippies went and sat on the dance floor in the front. And people started dancing by them and kicking them, cowboy boots in the small of the back as they came by. And Willie stopped. He's just in the middle of the song. He said, "There's room for some to sit and for some to dance."
It was like the first time that the rednecks and the hippies had been in the same room anywhere, especially in Texas, and they were all doing the same thing. Pass the beer around, pass the joint around, and realized that they had something in common, namely the music.
What I like about Willie is he is quite underrated as a lead guitarist. His solo work on that crazy beat-up Martin guitar is phenomenal.
Someday when we meet up yonder.
We've remained pals for 4 decades. Love, Willie Nelson.
We will stroll hand in hand again.
It's one thing to listen to Willie Nelson on Spotify. It's another thing to see him in Austin, because there you're seeing him in his native habitat, why he is the way he is.
Blue eyes crying in the rain.
I wanted to ask you about Austin City Limits. Were you the first?
I was the first. I got played it more than anybody.
They talked Willie Nelson into doing it for $500. Lone Star Beer put up some money to pay for it, and the show aired on PBS.
Well, it's a bloody merry morning, baby. Left me without warning sometime in the night.
Without question, I think Austin City Limits brought international attention to this small town.
Did you watch it a lot?
Oh, yeah. I went to tapings from time to time, because they weren't that hard to get into.
And you know that Austin City Limits was in that old rusty building on campus forever and ever.
Now, the last time I did it was one of the last tapings in the old studios.
It started in that room, and it stayed in that room for 36 years. We're in a new room today, brand new state-of-the-art facility. Although we have moved out of the original studio,
Man, that would be huge. Like, I don't know how possible that is, but
it's totally possible. Like I said, the studio is there, and even though the show's downtown in our new venue, we still do all of our posts back at the old place. So, I mean, if you wanted to do everything in there, man, I'd be thrilled to work with you and clear the time that you need to do it. Whatever.
We have that on camera, Terry, just so you know. We didn't cut yet.
Well, this is it. This is the so-called historic Studio 6A. Nobody thought it was going to
Oh, we're recording and making a TV show. Remember? Yeah. What's up? Sound-wise, is sick.
Okay, this is where we're gonna put the dead body.
I think James and I were a bit stressed before we came to Austin. We knew it wasn't set up like a traditional recording studio.
Two.
Dude, you gotta hold the button down before you talk to me. I can't hear you. What?
I think James had been here before and said the room was fairly dry.
That's the one we used in Chicago, isn't it? Yep.
Because it's a television studio, it doesn't have a lot of ambience, but we actually found out once we got here and we set up the mics, it actually sounded really good, really cool.
I started working at the radio station in my hometown in Poughkeepsie, WPDH, and a listener called and said, "Have you ever been to Austin?" I said, "No, that's in Texas, right?" And he said, "There is an incredible music scene in Austin, and you really ought to go check it out someday." So I was kind of looking for an excuse for a road trip to go to Willie Nelson's 4th of July picnic.
Thank you very much and welcome to the Willie Nelson.
To Austin. I landed a job at KUTFM in the same building as the PBS station where Austin City Limits is being born, and talked my way into the job as producer of Austin City Limits.
I took over in season 4, and that's when we built this stage where Roy Orbison hit those high notes that only he could.
You gotta take if you're lonely.
Hard to imagine that Ray Charles and his 17-piece orchestra actually did fit here somehow.
Georgia.
I always do the introductions to the show from the stage, and I was getting ready to introduce Johnny Cash and noticed he's off in the corner, a little fidgety. Asked him if there was anything he needed, and he just kind of looked at me and said, "No, I'm all right. It's just that this is a real music show, and I just want to make sure that I get it right."
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. Good evening.
And afterwards, Johnny called it one of the best TV performances that he had ever done. We have had a lot of historic moments take place in this room across all genres of music.
And they had good sound for a change on TV. Most of the time, TV sound hadn't got that good yet.
Clap your hands, come on, let's go!
When the Foo Fighters played Austin City Limits, it was a big deal for all of us because we'd all grown up watching the show. When you walk into that room and you step foot on that stage, you can feel the ghosts and the spirits come out of it. There's something about that stage that's just different than anywhere else. I don't know if they realized how important the show was when they first started doing it. There weren't too many of those shows on television when I was a kid.
Music in Austin was always a big thing. The music scene goes back to at least the 1930s and 1940s. There was this club called the Victory Grill, where people like B.B. King and Bobby Blue Bland played some of their first live shows. There was a Skyline Club, which is the last place that Hank Williams played before he died in 1952. And Elvis played 5 times, you know, before anybody knew who he was.
By the 1950s and 1960s, Houston was really the music mecca.
B.B. King, his entire band from Houston. Little Richard, first recordings in Houston. In his autobiography, Ray Charles says, if you want to get a good band, go to Houston.
Houston was the mecca, but Austin was where all the girls in the halter tops were.
Austin was quite a magnet.
If you knew Peggy Sue. I mean, it was a big college town.
To California there, and there was like psychedelic bands, you know, the 13th Floor Elevators and the Moving Sidewalks, Billy Gibbons' first band. The Sidewalks and the Elevators lived in the same fucking house in Houston.
That was 66, 67. I was like 16, and just learning how to traverse new avenues of sound.
I know that you had bands before the Moving Sidewalks. Or was that really the first one?
We were previously called the Saints. We added horns, we became this big rhythm and blues thing. And then, boom, 1966. The 13th Floor Elevators appeared. What Rocky and his gang were doing was off the chain. We suddenly changed our name to the Moving Sidewalks. You know, 13th Floor Elevators, okay, Moving Sidewalks. It's about forward motion. Go up, go forward. This was the same time everybody was discovering mind-altering interests.
There was real live dilysergic acid diethylamide, you know, 25. And it was because Owsley himself brought it there and set up another chemist in the laboratories at the University of Texas. And there was heroin, and there was some coke, every other kind of psychedelic you could imagine.
And some of those excursions were not so popular with law enforcement. And the straight and narrow started becoming wider and wider and wider. Now, because of their scrapes with the law, the Elevators wound up in San Francisco when basically the scene was coffee houses. It was more of a folk scene.
I went to school up there near San Francisco. At that time, the folk thing was huge up there, and jug bands and stuff like that. Rock and roll to us was like Squaresville, you know, folk was cool.
And then, bang, everybody went electric.
I didn't realize that they were considered to be the pioneers of
Oh yeah, because they
psychedelic
went to
music.
San Francisco and like were playing that stuff, and people were just like, you know, yeah.
The band I was in college, we used to play Rocky songs and 13th Floor Elevator songs. If you listen to those early records, I don't know anybody who was quite doing what they did.
This music's fucking rad.
Yeah, we got Leonard Two-Headed Dogs.
Oh, cool. It's a good song. It's pretty good.
Rocky Erickson's voice is the most wickedly lovely demonic sound.
One of the greatest screams, when he sings that first line in Two-Headed Dog, man, it's just one of the best moments in rock and roll.
Two-headed dog, I'd be working in the Kremlin with a two-headed dog.
What a goddamn pioneer. And I truly love psychedelic rock. I really do. I mean, I just do. I mean, I put Echo on everything if I could, you know? And I love the fact that one of my favorite bands of all time, ZZ Top, was totally influenced by him. No, he's not necessarily in the finest of mental health or whatever.
How would you describe the Elevators for someone that's never heard them?
Well, I guess they get into it right off, you know, because that music, it's kind of careful music, you know, but we did come up with it, you know, and everything, you know.
Once you guys became an established band, did you see the whole thing like getting bigger and bigger?
Well, we just each time we'd play, you know, we'd feel more confident about what we were doing, you know. We'd get Crockett or something like that.
You know, I've met Billy Gibbons,
Mhm.
and I like him a lot. He's a really good dude. And someone once told me that they named their band kind of as in tribute to you guys. That you
Is
guys.
that right?
Did you
Wow.
not know that?
I didn't know about that. That's great. Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Well, how did ZZ Top start? They just, somebody said, well, you know, it'd be better to call you ZZ Top or something.
Did you get to see the 13th floor elevators?
Yeah, I saw him in a Chinese restaurant.
What was it like?
They were crazy. And, you know, the guy had the electric jug and everything. You know, it wasn't mainstream, if you know what I mean. But they had records, you know. That's what I mean. That was what was cool about Austin. They were getting away with it. They were doing it. And they played all the time, so.
In the period when I came here, the 13th floor elevators had become really famous, and it was beginning the decline of Rocky.
How long did it last, that band?
Until they started trying to help me about if they thought I was in trouble for drugs or something like that, you know, and then that first time, you know, they came over there and they said, wow.
They decided, look, this guy's quit school in the 11th grade. And why? Because he has long hair and he's too morbid and weird beliefs, you know, and here he is in a psychedelic band. Way, buddy, we got to put our finger on that. So they did.
They had him incarcerated for years and years on a trumped-up count of whatever, and he had a choice: either go to prison or go to a mental hospital. And he was advised, don't go to prison. Maybe you can make it out of the mental ward. And fortunately, he did, thanks to his brother and some well-wishers that had never forgotten what Rocky stood for in the 60s.
There's part of me that I wondered if you like James Brown, you know?
Yes, I do like James Brown.
Do you really?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Because when your voice gets up there into that high stuff, like, yeah, I always thought, well, that sounds like James Brown.
I tell you, I've been influenced by, well, James Brown, you know, he screams like, I've been getting into screaming like that real thing that hurts you. Just, you know, I wonder where he is, you know, just.
He's the living embodiment of psychedelic music. He invented it, and that's to say a lot. It's really said a lot.
Then Austin became kind of a focal point of music against the grain, a place with no boundaries.
There was a counterculture in Austin before there was one in other cities.
I was counterculture because my uncle was, and you know, I was the kid among a group of people that were for the most part 5 and up to 10 years older than I was. Not much interested in school, and I ran away from home when I was 14. They brought me back and I ran away again in the middle of the second semester.
Well, nothing ever happened around my hometown. I ain't the kind of just hang around. And I heard someone calling my name one day, and I followed that voice down a lost highway.
I moved out of the house when I was 16, and I was very heavily interested in music, and I started hanging out around, you know, this coffee house called the Gatehouse. And I started going over to Houston because I started hearing about a place called the Old Quarter and a place called Sand Mountain, a coffee house. The main thing I went over there looking for was Townes Van Zandt. As soon as I started playing coffee houses, I started hearing about Townes, and people played Townes' songs. And I went to the record store, and there were Townes' records, and I didn't know any difference between Townes Van Zandt and, you know, Jackson Browne or anybody else that had a record in the record store. Anybody who had a record in the record store was a big star as far as I knew. I met him in a place in the Old Quarter in Houston. And I followed him around for a couple of years.
Did you feel akin to what his whole vibe was?
It was a cult. All of us, me, Lucinda Williams, Guy Clark even, everybody went through their own stage of wanting to be him. Some people emulated the wrong things, including me sometimes.
Did shut down all the honky tonks tonight. I say a prayer too, if I only knew. You always said the highway was your home. We both know that ain't true. It's just the only place.
When I got to know him, I realized he wasn't making any money. And Townes could have made a lot more money than he made. But what's important is it didn't cause him to stop doing what he was doing. I witnessed somebody that had committed to being an artist, no matter what the outcome of that was as far as their livelihood.
It never really was your kind of town, but you went around with the Fort Worth blues.
Austin City Limits put Austin on the map nationally. The early seasons, it's pretty strictly, you know, country and blues and folk. Stuff that was popular in the country region in the South, but it gave it a national voice.
One of the first shows that I booked in my first year as producer was Tom Waits, who had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with country music or with Austin.
Sticks and stones may break my bones. Always will be true.
Tom Waits was kind of one big step in a different direction for the show. And to this day, that is still like one of the most in-demand shows, a 40-year-old Tom Waits show.
The land up all around the block on the nickel over there.
You're probably not using piano much on anything, right?
We are, actually.
For the song?
Do you have an old...
It's a baby grand.
Yeah?
But it is the piano. Ray Charles, Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah. Did you just film what that just happened?
I haven't used it much for anything.
What?
Still in good shape. Yeah. Why this shit's on it? I have no idea.
People always said it sounded incredible.
Who's played on this?
Jerry
we
Lee
have
Lewis,
to give you the complete list.
Fats Domino, Ray Charles.
Everyone.
Really?
Was it here for Tom Waits and stuff?
Yeah, he played this. He played this too. I'm sure Tom.
What is going on in here?
Well, they use it for the PBS pledge drives and for local productions and staff brown bag lunches.
Private parties.
And, you know, but, you know, so far it still looks exactly the same.
It's weird, man. It's like the Twilight Zone with the cigarette still in the ashtray. It just looks like you had a show in here last night. Wow, man. Okay, I'm going to tell those guys right now.
Blue Monday, I hate the Monday. Got to work like a slave all day.
I forgot that song. Yeah, whatever.
You want to give me a level of the track so this thing works right? Can you relay a message to everybody out there? They need to shut the fuck up and stay still, because we're picking up everything. Shut the fuck up if you're in this room. No farting. Okay, let's try it again.
Archie Bunker's chair is in the Smithsonian, and this piano is in the corner of the room with blankets over it and a bunch of stuff on top of it. I was shocked.
Sorry.
You're just a hair late on the da 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 dun bum.
And when the Armadillo World Headquarters opened, that was a milestone in Austin's musical evolution.
When I moved to
Grateful Dead and Springsteen played one of his first Texas shows there. But they also booked Willie and Waylon.
And that place would be packed. Be thousands of people in there doing the Cotton Eye Joe or whatever they did.
Let's hear a hoot and a holler right now.
My little bands were sort of anti that. You know, we didn't want to be country. We wanted to be blues. The first song I learned was Honky Tonk by Bill Doggett. You know, and I basically haven't progressed very much since then.
People think, oh yeah, that blues stuff, that's easy until you start listening and then try and learn it. My buddy Jimmy Vaughn said, oh yeah, he said, just when you think it's easy, you start realizing just how tough it is.
We say, we're going to have a blues band. They go, you can't do that. You'll never get anywhere. We didn't care. We were having fun. This guy named Clifford Antone, he was totally into blues. All he cared about was Jimmy Reed and Muddy Waters. And finally, he just opened a club and said, okay, this is Antone, so we're going to have blues here. And we got to be the house band, the Thunderbirds. King, Albert Collins, all the guys from Chicago would come there and play for like a week. And we got to learn, you know, from watching these guys.
Albert King played left-handed, like Hendrix. Not restrung, but just turn the guitar over and play.
You didn't go and ask Albert King to sit in. He was a huge, mean guy, and he was Albert King. You know, the meanest guitar player you've ever heard of.
All of us right-handed guitar players go nuts trying to figure out how Albert King played like that. And you can't comprehend it till you turn the guitar over like this, because all those pulls were down, not up. So Albert became my favorite guy.
You didn't go up and ask Albert King to sit in. Nobody did. But Clifford said, hey, there's this kid named Stevie Ray Vaughan that wants to sit in with you. He can play just like you. And so Albert's like, okay. And he got my brother up when my brother was 17.
This was way early ZZ Top. We were doing a show at a club called Arthur in Dallas, and Stevie tiptoed in. Of course, I was friends with his older brother, Jimmy. He said, come on up, man. And he was already tearing it up. And he couldn't have been maybe 15.
Do you remember the first time we played Austin City Limits?
Yeah. There would be like 300 people in there. Everybody would be dancing and pretty fast forgot what you were doing and just had a good time. We were on a show, and I think Stevie opened the show. And
The first time Stevie Ray did the show, he was just a sweaty mess on the stage, and he kept leaving the stage and going off thinking, you know, man, I just can't do this. I've never played this bad. While everybody in the audience was just like, wow, this is awesome, this is incredible shit.
I just remember it, like a dream almost. I remember seeing it.
I've seen a bunch of the old episodes that were filmed in this room, and I mean, I guess most notably, the Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff. Yeah, one of the greatest guitar players that ever walked the earth. I mean, even then, even as a kid, you could tell that he was something special.
That last show that he did in 1990, literally just months before he died in that helicopter crash, was so incredibly powerful. Eric Clapton probably described it better than anybody, that there was like this
Blues comes and goes, it ebbs and flows. It'll be around. One by one, somebody's gonna like it enough to chase it.
Did you ever listen to the blues? Were you a blues person?
A little bit. I like Delta blues. I don't really care for northern blues like Chicago blues. I don't like perky blues. If you have to suffer to sing the blues, I don't think you necessarily have to suffer to be punk rock, but it helps. I don't think you have to be angry, but it probably helps. Not compared to Austin.
God, that scene was so cool. Those days were just the most awesome.
And when the punk stuff really started up, I was working at a record store and gravitated more towards Clash than I did Sex Pistols, because Sex Pistols just sound like a rock and roll band to me, and Clash kind of sounded more like the Beatles.
Did you have musical aspirations before any of this, or not?
Perhaps, however, with no musical ability. I was the worst accountant probably in the history of that Pete Marwick Mitchell office in San Antonio, Texas.
I wanted to go to art school and teach college art. I thought that way I could have summers off and hang out with, hot co-eds during the year and teach them how to draw. And then punk rock came along.
Playing a show at a big play, it was just so unobtainable. And then here comes punk rock, where anybody can get up here and do this. Music isn't what got me first. What got me first was the whole idea that the guy crowd are making fanzines, they're doing photos, they're doing stuff. They're all being creative, hook, line, and sinker. I thought this is the greatest thing ever.
The big boys, they were one of the first. In a scene that lasted for about a decade, they were really one of the first. They had the energy of a band like Black Flag or the Sex Pistols, but you could dance.
That's the skating connection of all of this, is I probably wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for skating. The Urethane Wells had just come out, and we all skated together. And Biscuit skated with us, and we're skating to like Brick House and just all this kind of funk stuff is what we're skating to, kind of thing. And since there were no rules or no uniform, we started playing funk and stuff because that's what we listened to.
And you guys used to tell the audience to go start their own band.
Yeah, and these paintings, what they're signed? Your name here. Because if you look at the bottom of this thing to see who painted this and you see your name here, it's like, yeah, come on, you can do this too, you can do something.
Someone pointed that out to me, that don't follow in the footsteps of the masters, see what they sought.
Yeah, you should always walk your walk, stay true, do what you're doing, because you never know when you might plant a seed and something might happen. It's amazing.
It's crazy to think about in the early 80s in Texas, there's a punk band playing funk with an outrageous cross-dressing frontman.
There's pockets in Dallas and San Antonio and Houston, but for the most part,
From your hometown, wherever it was, you landed in Austin. We'd come up to Austin to go hang out at Raoul's, which was the punk rock club.
There was Raoul's on Guadalupe on the main drag by the university. Frat boys would drive by and throw beers at us and yell Devo out the window.
there was a stoplight, like it's here, and then there's a stoplight here. So when the idiot frats were like screaming, hollering at us and throwing stuff, they wouldn't realize that the light was red and the car in front had stopped and just slammed, and all of us would be like that.
It was just a really cool community of nutcases and misfits and stuff. I remember touring bands would come through and always marvel about how there was slam dancing going on. And people in Austin would help somebody who fell down. They would help them up.
The San Antonio newspaper found out we were playing in Austin. I don't know how they came down to Austin and took a picture of me on stage, naked with an American flag wrapped around my waist, and it was on fire. And their headline, this was on the front page of the entertainment section of the Sunday newspaper, and it said, "Could this be the worst band in the history of rock and roll?" It was absolutely hopeless. We were in a band called the Butthole Surfers. I mean, give me a break.
I remember there was an all-ages show, and they just brought out a naked woman. And the people who owned it were like, you can't do this, it's all-ages show, we're gonna get shut down. So Gibby lit part of the place on fire. Yeah.
In 1985, there wasn't a band on earth who could touch them live.
I don't mind the sun sometimes, the images it shows.
You know what? I like what Thurston Moore said one time, the last psychedelic band. I wonder why they've never asked us to play on Austin City Limits.
Just like skating, as big as people think all this stuff was back then, it was this small little thing, and we might as well have all been from Mars or Saturn.
It's interesting because it seems like with South by Southwest, it's become this huge music industry capital.
The people that started South by were all at Raoul's. Lewis Black, who runs the Chronicle, all those people were Raoul's.
It started here in 1987 really as a reaction from Roland Swenson, who's the founder, who was a band manager and couldn't get the music industry to come to pay attention to any of his bands. He got $5,000 from the Austin Chamber of Commerce, and it was partially underwritten by the Austin Chronicle, where he was still an employee.
It was all these bands nobody really knew about. They're just trying to play for people.
Me and my buddies, we used to call it South by So What.
It started out with 800 people and I think 200 bands and 15 clubs.
It was pretty exciting when it started. Everybody had gigs and they were playing in different clubs.
I mean, we get now 10,000 applications to play for about 2,300 slots.
It's not really a local thing anymore. You know, you see bands from all over the world.
A couple of years ago, I think it was, there were 120-something bands just from Australia.
There's a Korean night, there's a Dutch night, there's a Japan night.
I don't think it's really a music festival anymore. It's spring break.
And then now the record companies come and they have budgets, and there's bands playing on the corner.
Everybody else is glommed on to South by Southwest, which takes away from what the heart of what South by Southwest was created to be.
And I think as South by Southwest came along, it drew more attention to Austin.
There's still evidence of small townness to be found in Austin, but by and large, it's really grown up.
It's not so much isolated or localized as it once was, but there's still a history and a legacy there, you know, that deserves a lot of respect and that we can learn a lot from.
Because you're born and raised here, you have probably one of the better perspectives on this city. Growing up, you must have known that this was somewhat of a music capital, right?
I didn't know. I never really crossed the river to go anywhere other than like my grandmother's house. Every now and then we would drive down 6th Street and, you know, check it out during the day, but I didn't know all this stuff was happening until I went down for my friend Eve's birthday party. And I was like, how could you keep this from me? Like, this is everything that I want in my life. So I jumped in, man. I started skipping school. I started missing out on projects. I wasn't doing homework. I was hanging out in smoky bars way too late and showing up to school in the morning just disinterested. Like, where were you? It's like I was hanging with Jimmy Vaughn and Pine Top Perkins and James Cotton at Antone's last night.
You remember him from when he was a little kid?
Yes.
What did you think the first time you saw this little kid?
Well, I just didn't think anything about it. I just figured his parents, you know, brought their kid. And then I started hearing about him, Gary Clark, and he plays with that little girl named Eve. You got to hear him play.
Yeah, I don't read music, so it's either by sight or, you know, by ear. Had mad VHS tapes of Austin City Limits, and they're worn, like you can tell, like parts where I just watched them over and over again. Okay, well, it's somewhere in here. That awesomeness is in this section of the neck, you know what I mean? So let me figure that out. Spent a lot of time like this close to the TV, like what is that?
So finally one night, we got him up. He had that smooth thing that he's got now. But there's a smoothness on top of the soulful roughness that's going on that you immediately get. Bam, you get it when you hear him. And he had that when he was a little kid. So everybody's like, okay, we know he's got it. He's as heavy as a blues player as anybody. He's for real. He's not faking it, you know what I mean?
He asked me to open up some shows for him and took me on the road for my first time. I just graduated high school, so I was like 19 or something. Yeah, I was young. I couldn't even get into most of the clubs. I would play the set and then they'd make me sit outside. And yeah, I still got pictures of like me in the club with X's on my hands. You know, it's too young.
We're real proud of him, you know, in Austin because he's sort of like the new generation.
He's like a mentor and a teacher. I'll always be grateful. He changed my life, you know what I mean? On the stage was with Jimmy Vaughn. Just like the first time I saw Austin City Limits, Jimmy Vaughn, it was on, you know what I mean? It's a trip. I mean, I'm tripped out right now. I'm sitting here, it's crazy.
It gets weirder too,
does it?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
We have almost 40 years of these incredible classic historic performances.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine.
I'd love it to think that people, anybody, anywhere in the world can someday go and watch that Johnny Cash song from 1982 or the Willie Nelson song from his pilot show when he was 39 years old. Or, you know, pick an artist, pick a song. That's history, man.
Now, have you played on Austin City Limits, the TV show?
I performed on Austin City Limits with Rocky Erickson. He's emerged and risen from the ashes of a really challenging period, and it's a real bonus.
Two-headed dog, two-headed dog. I'd be working in the Kremlin with a two-headed dog, two-headed dog.
The idea of putting people together on stage to perform live for an audience with no holds barred, no editing, just musicians in a room. Usually those moments are only seen in smoky bars and small clubs and basements and theaters, but they managed to capture them and share them with the world. I worry about cities like Austin because it's only a matter of time before that candle blows out, man.
When cops started coming around with decibel meters at the gigs, telling people to turn it down because, you know, neighbors or residents of like new condos that went up weren't feeling the noise, I was like, okay, this is a game changer. Like, that's what we do. You know what I mean? Like, we make noise, and people love it. That's why we're here. That's like the thing. It's like music, food, outside, the river. Like, that's what we do. Like, don't fuck with that.
I mean, my biggest concern is that the prices of places to live become too high, that it pushes the creative people out. I mean, we need those people in our community to continue to make it interesting.
So with South by Southwest getting bigger and ACL and their new venue getting bigger,
yeah.
Like, then how do you keep Austin weird?
That's a good question. The reason why all the artists moved here in the first place was because you can move here and live on basically nothing. You could, you know, make music or do art or do your craft and be able to survive.
And there's a lot of people who think it's growing too fast. Maybe I gotta move further west. And maybe, you know, at some point you might want to because the population is growing. But there's plenty of room out west. It's a long way to El Paso.
Decisions. Like, which decisions do other things people think should happen. That's where I'm at. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
All right, here we go.
There you go again, putting words into my mouth. This one's for you to know, and for me to find out. And all that troubling you want about, how you gonna know till you hear it out loud? Stop, ask myself, what did I do? What did I do to deserve you? Go on, tell me now, what did I do? Coming from the 13th floor. Your song came along, heard the voices tell me to save yourself. Behave yourself. I stop, ask myself, what can I do? What can I do to preserve you? Go on, tell me now, what can I do? What can I do to conserve you? Your name, your fame, I can see the writing on the wall. Come on, flip a coin, bet it's gonna tell you to save yourself. Behave yourself. Young man channeling, knowing my yes on his hand. You raised runaways, singing at the gate to save yourself. Behave yourself. So here I go again, putting words into your mouth. This one's for me to know, and for you to find out. till you hear it out loud. All your heroes, where are they now? I'm lost, delivered.